All right, so let's get into this. There was some interesting stuff on the internet today involving the Houston Texans, a failed trade attempt, and also some chatter that's kind of gotten mentioned about a guy that they're very dependent on that may or may not be connected to the initial comment about the trade. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. I am Landry Locker. So the New England Patriots. This was on Pro Football Talk. They put out the video. This is from the Patriots Wire. The New England Patriots received offers for the number 38 overall pick. Travion Henderson was the pick that the Patriots ended up making. The assumption is that teams were looking to move up for Henderson, which would make sense. The Bears were revealed as one of the teams. They offered the 39th and 7th rounder in exchange for 38. Another ESPN Mike Reese suggests might have come from the Texans. He wrote the following, quote, in a different proposal, possibly from Houston, the Patriots turned down a deal for pick 38 that would have given them 58, 79, and a 2025 third rounder. Another detail of note, the 2026 fourth round pick they acquired in a trade from Kansas City for the number 85 in the selection, originally owned by Chicago. And we actually have the screenshots of where the New England Patriots put this video out. And now you can actually see. And a lot of times the video proof is more valuable than any report, especially this day and age. So we actually got the visual. If you want to check it out on the Patriots Twitter of this, I think Pro Football Talk threw this out as well. So this is what the trade would have looked like had the Texans gone up 20 spots with the New England Patriots. And the Texans did select Jaden Higgins before this. So they would have already had him, and then they would have moved up from 58 to 38. And who they would have taken, your guess is as good as mine. Now, to make sense of this, I think we need to go back to the conversations that we were having before the draft. And the conversations were they need a running back, at least here. They need a running back. And if you look at the visits that they had before the draft, it would kind of tell you that they knew that they needed a running back. And then you listen to Nick Caserio's comments before the draft, in which he, talked about what Joe Mixon does for the team, and then talked about the two guys behind him, and basically mentioned their special teams contributions as their value on the roster. So it would make sense that the Texans wanted to trade up and get a running back. And oh, by the way, 2 rounds after this, early in the process, they ended up drafting Woody Marks and trading up for Woody Marks out of USC, who has a similar skill set to what Travion Henderson would bring. Not as successful, not as good between the tackles, not as established, but it would make sense to think that maybe they wanted to go get the running back, and maybe that running back would have been Travion Henderson, who the Patriots ended up selecting. But the reality is, if you look at that deal again, I know Caserio, he says he doesn't believe in charts until he wins, and then he talks about the charts and kind of in passing, in jest. But it tells you that whatever they were trying to do here, they felt strong enough to where they were willing to offer a lot. Now, that might not mean as much with Nick Caserio, because Nick Caserio is pretty reckless once he gets some extra draft equity. But it does say that they were willing to go up there and get a running back. And could it have been Travion Henderson? Now, we'll never know. I don't think they were trading up to get Ursery. And if they were, then my gosh, you ended up getting him a lot later on than you would have been had you been trading up to get him. And I think if that had been the case, I think Nick Caserio would have come out and said, we wanted Ursery, we wanted to trade up and get him sooner, but we didn't do it. And that's kind of the world. And this is where I kind of feel for Nick Caserio. There's so many videos. There's so many reports. There's so many people with loose lips these days in the NFL that if you try to make a trade and you fail, it's going to get out there. And it's gonna create a lot of speculation from guys like me, which I kind of appreciate it. And it's also going to create perhaps from a player, like clear transparency that he wasn't your first option. So sometimes, like when we see Nick Caserio, and this is kind of tracing back to the draft, I said, wow, Nick Caserio is being really honest about trying to trade up. And, we had a deal here and all that. And I start to think about it, and maybe he just realizes that he doesn't have a choice because it's going to get out there, because these teams are recording these phone conversations in the draft room, because these reports do come out very often. So maybe that's why Nick Caserio was being so transparent about this, is because he really didn't have a choice. But I think it would make sense to trade up and get Trey Henderson. And I think it would make sense for a lot of reasons. And I also have no problem with the pivot, because we talked about that right there. Around 40 was where the money spot was going to be for running backs. Henderson, Judkins, Hampton ended up going early. But that was going to be the money spot for running backs. And after that, there was a significant drop-off for a while. So if you wanted to be aggressive, you're probably being aggressive to get in that money spot, and you're doing so at a position which we previously mentioned that Nick Caserio had basically blown the cover and confirmed common sense that the Texans needed the position. So, okay, let's just pretend. And then let's look at the fallback plan. I think the fallback plan was perfectly executed. And I don't think using a fallback plan is really like some sort of like telling thing. Like if they weren't going to make the trade with you, they weren't going to make the trade with you. And you ended up getting a receiver who most of us like, and you ended up pivoting. Sometimes when you pivot, that's when the best things play out in the draft. I use the Micah Parsons example. The Cowboys didn't want Micah Parsons. They wanted one of three corners ahead of Micah Parsons. And they ended up, quote, settling for Micah Parsons. We don't know if the Texans wanted Kamari Lassiter last year. He ended up falling to them. Was J.J. Watt the top choice for the Texans? Had they had their pickings of everyone that went ahead of him? Probably not. But it ended up working that way. So I don't think this is some sort of indictment. Like the whole purpose of this video is not like an indictment on Caserio, although I do think it's funny how reckless he is with his draft picks. But I think it's just proof that perhaps they knew that they needed a running back, and it's proof that they were aggressively going to try to perhaps get that running back, and it ended up not working out for them. So they ended up getting Knoll, they ended up getting Higgins, they ended up getting Nursery, which I think is a pretty good day too. That I think most of us feel they came away pretty well in day two. So I think they ended up the backup plan, if it was the backup plan, which, I mean, we have the video proof. I think it ended up being pretty well. Shout out to Jay Hoover on the super chat.
Swarm.
Appreciate you, my friend. Shout out to everyone in the chat. But that brings me to kind of this when it comes to Nick Caserio. If they knew that they needed, and we already knew that they needed running back depth, what do they do now? What do they do now? Do they feel like Woody Marks satisfies their need? Like, do they feel like they've done enough when it comes to Woody Marks? Do we see them in the market for a J.K. Dobbins? I'm ready another running back on the market. Do they feel good about Joe Mixon? And there's some interesting news or not news, or I don't even know how to describe it, on Joe Mixon from one of the top Texans reporters, Aaron Wilson. I'll let you make of this whatever you desire. It's a lot, but we'll try to unpack it and we'll try to make some sense of it in a second. What's going on with Joe Mixon, or what's not going on with Joe Mixon, and where they're at when it comes to the running back. I don't know that they double down on Dameon Pierce. Doubling down on Dameon Pierce would be a triple down or a quadruple down on Dameon Pierce. Double down is we've already been through that. We were in that. We went through that last year. So this could be a triple or a quadruple, however you look at it. I would call it more of a settle, which could end up looking however. But I would say it's more of a settle than a double down. I think we had the double down last year when at the end of the previous season he was damn near unplayable. And then last year we saw him getting hurt as with his main contributions as a special teamer. So I don't even know that it's really a double at this point with Dameon Pierce. Feels like it might be a little bit more of a triple or a settle when it comes to Dameon Pierce. But the reality is, when you look at this, and you look at them perhaps looking to trade up for Henderson, the dependency on Joe Mixon is there, and Joe Mixon is a year older at a position where it's been very well documented what happens to running backs at that age. Now, he did a good job last year, although he ended up getting hurt with the illegal tackle. But now the question is, and Aaron Wilson, he has a YouTube channel, and he also reports for KPRC. He talked about Mixon being in a walking boot for protective reasons right now. And maybe that's nothing. The quote from the video is, "It's something, but it's not anything real big." Close quote. It's something, but it's not anything real big. And he's protecting himself. So what are you protecting yourself from? And it's definitely something when he's on the walking boot. But I hear this and I just automatically think, okay, did he tear some ligaments? Is there a sprain? Where did it happen? And I had heard some of this under the radar, but just on the internet streets or whatever, or messages. But I don't just take what I hear on the DMs or whatever and decide to run with it. But when Aaron Wilson says it, I mean, I guess it's kind of fair game at this point. And it leads to the question of, how hurt is Joe Mixon? Is he going to be ready to go? It's something, but it's not anything big. What is he protecting it from? And it really goes back to whether this happened or not. The question of, are they too Mixon dependent right now? Is there too much dependency on Joe Mixon? I think there's a lot. And I think the fact that they were willing to make that trade should tell you that they would like to give Joe Mixon some help in that backfield, and they would like to improve the running back room, and they would be willing to pay a pretty decent price to be able to do that. And unfortunately for them, they weren't able to do it, and they got Woody Marks. So Woody Marks was not someone, I know it's someone that they aggressively went, assuming that they were trading for Henderson. That was plan A and what they were trying to do. So we'll see. I guess we keep an eye on the workouts. Maybe we see Joe Mixon out there and it's nothing. Again, it's something, but it's nothing big. Was the quote from that? But it's something to check out. Trey of Texas says it's something, but it isn't anything real big. Sounds like his disclaimer for the women he dates. I don't know what that means. And shout out to Miss Wilson. I have no idea what that is. Kevin says, man, this is not good. Mix hurt would be a huge blow for the team. And we saw it last year. We saw it last year. A third round trade up for a RB is something to check out. Well, it could speak to desperation. But and it was a fourth round with Marks, but it could speak to just the overall desperation and of missing out on Henderson and then going on to the next plan is what it could be. So we'll keep an eye on Woody Marks, and we'll keep an eye on what the Texans do, and we'll definitely keep an eye on Joe Mixon. and see what the hell happens there and where the hell things go from there, because that is a hell of a lot of info and a hell of a lot of stuff going on when it comes to the Texans running back position. Caserio also brought something else up before the draft, the 50-50 test, where he said that draft picks are 50-50. A lot of people kind of rolled their eyes at that and thought that was a weird thing to say because you should have a little bit more confidence. I think it's fair. Like when you look at the overall production of draft picks when they're selected, the guys that end up getting second contracts, I actually think it's probably less than 50%. And that's an NFL wide thing. Some teams are better at drafting, but I think the way that Caserio said that, I think it's accurate to what the situation is. And I think I can understand what he was trying to say and what the basis of was with why he said it and what he was basing it on. Here's the thing though. When you say this, and then you draft 2 tackles in the last 2 years, very, very expensive positions, and you use premium picks, you use 2 second-round picks on these tackles, and you draft 2 wide receivers in the second round, pretty premium picks too. Shouldn't we expect one of each of these 2 to, at the very least, at the bare minimum, to pan out? Especially given the fact that when these guys, when they're on their rookie contract, it'll be about the same time when their rookie contract's wrapping up. It'll be about the same time that CJ Stroud's rookie contract is wrapping up. And I think they'll overlap 1 or 2 years. No, 1 year, because these guys don't have 5th-year options because they're second-round picks. So when Caserio says the 50-50 formula test, the 50-50 formula is going to be tested, and it's going to be tested at 2 of the most crucial positions when it comes to where you are as an organization and where things are with CJ Stroud, the guys that are blocking for him, and the guys that he's throwing to. So that's an interesting thing that Nick Caserio throws out there when he says the 50-50, and it's gonna be played out. So that'll be something else to keep an eye on as things go on. And in the case of Higgins, that was the pick that you made. If I don't think it's fair to compare what Henderson would be unless he just becomes a crazy stud. Then you can say, well, maybe the Higgins thing, and this is complete hindsight, but you will start to wonder, if this wasn't the plan A and Ursery and Knoll don't pan out, then what are we looking at there? I actually think Knoll was a really, really solid selection. I think it was really, really putting to practice the act of drafting the best player available. I thought Caserio did a pretty good job with that. So the adjustment was fine, regardless of what the normal goal. On the super chat, you ain't never hate. Swarm. Nomad_Scott says, tonight at the State of the Texans, D'Amico Ryans unprompted said he believes in Dameon and looks forward to seeing him get more touches this year. He said that last year. Like I don't put any stock in what he says about Dameon. Like he said he believed in Dameon last year, and we really didn't. I mean, how much did we really see it? We saw it in some mop-up duty. But yeah, he loves Dameon. He's probably rooting for him. But if they're trying to trade up for running backs, I mean, what does that really say? And if he does believe in him, do you believe in him? Because D'Amico's going to be a player's coach. He's going to go to bat for the guys on his roster, whether Kenyon Green's struggling, whether Titus Howard is struggling. He's going to go to bat for his players. So I have no doubt, like if Dameon Pierce is rolling to camp, D'Amico's going to speak well on him. But I would be more surprised if he came out and said that the next player that D'Amico Ryan says he doesn't believe in, even if it's a struggling player, even if it's someone that common sense and what we've seen and events would kind of counter belief, I think he's going to do it. So I don't really put a lot of stock in D'Amico's belief of Dameon Pierce. But I that would be awesome. Like there's not an easier player to root for than Dameon Pierce. And there's not really a better scenario than Dameon Pierce establishing himself finally as a solid RB2 and easing the burden with Joe Mixon. Now the problem I have with Dameon Pierce personally is if you look at Dameon Pierce and what the outside of really kind of under the radar, not being able to stay healthy. But if you look at Dameon Pierce and what we've talked about with Dameon Pierce going back to when they selected him, he had an awesome rookie year. We all, I mean, it was surpassed any expectations. Hell, he was more of a workhorse back his rookie year than he really was his whole time at Florida. I don't have the stats in front of me, but what was it, like 10 plus carry games or something like that? It was something like that to where you thought he was a complimentary back. He did his thing. He played very well his rookie season. The next season, Devin Singletary was light years ahead of Dameon Pierce. And the talk was, well, he's been going through some stuff. The system's a little bit difficult for him. Maybe the system doesn't fit him. It took him a while to pick it up. Like that was kind of the talk that you would hear from Caserio during his interviews with Sean and Seth, and then you would kind of hear it at press conferences and stuff as well. So if that's the case, like this is a new system. So maybe Bobby Slowick's system was just impossible to learn, and he wasn't that's not the type of system he has. But we also don't know what Nick Caley's going to run. Like, is Nick Caley going to run a branch of that Shanahan / McVay type of system? Is the New England system going to fit him? Because that was probably a little bit more of the offense he was running. Not probably, that was closer to the offense. So maybe there's a system fit, but are you buying Dameon Pierce stock? Because if you are, cool. Like, that's great. Like, crazier things have happened than Dameon Pierce going and establishing himself as a number 2 back. I'm not buying the stock, though. I'm not buying the Dameon Pierce stock. And if I was going to buy the stock, it wouldn't be as someone who's at D'Amico Ryan's press conferences, who kind of feels like I speak D'Amico. I wouldn't buying Dameon Pierce stock would not be based on anything that D'Amico Ryans would say. So that's just kind of where I am on that. Back to the soup. You ain't never hate. Swarm. Jimmy Crack Corn says jealous of Landry's cap collection. It's not anything special. Not anything special. Bradley on the chat says the people who haven't watched the game in a while are the ones talking about Dameon. Yeah, it's kind of a skewed yards per carry last year. A lot of mop up duty, the 2 long runs. Dominic with a hot take. My goodness. Nobody wants to say this, but before it's said and done, Caserio will be the one holding this team back. Mark my words. I don't have to mark your words. We can just address them right now. I don't know. I don't know that he's holding him back. I think it's a different ball game that he's playing now. I think it's a completely different game. I think it's elevated. I think he's gone from low expectations, a large array of patience from the front office, process over results we go back to, assets, the ability to be bad and draft high up, the Watson trade, which was a pain in the ass. But if ownership's going to support you and not pressure you to trade him, then that's perfectly handled. I give the McNairs credit for being patient with that, and him handling the situation and the card that he was dealt with the no trade clause and stuff. But you think he'll be the one holding the team back? Okay. I mean, I don't know. I just know this is different than what he's been doing, but I don't know. Any quality running backs on the trade block? The Stutes brought this up, and I thought this was an interesting name. And I know that whenever guys have success here, we like there tends to be a tendency, not just here, but anywhere, to kind of embrace the notion to bring them back. We just mentioned Devin Singletary. It hasn't gone awesome for Devin Singletary with the Giants, and they have some other options at running back. He could actually be a guy that gets cut. And the question that you have when it comes to Devin Singletary, it's interesting because on one hand, it was the Bobby Slowick system where he kind of had his breakout and he warranted the contract he got with the Giants. We don't know what that system is, but Dable's with the Giants too. And that's kind of where Kaylee comes from, the other side of it, with the Rams/49er system. So maybe Singletary could be someone who comes back. Maybe they just bring back Rankins and Singletary. Don't know. But as far as like intriguing free agent names, the answer is no. But maybe Singletary is someone to keep an eye on. Dylan says he's loading up on Dameon Pierce stock. It's penny stock at this point. Yeah, I mean, I bought some. I'm all about the penny stock. I'm all about the penny stock. Zeke says Pierce did look more beefed up in those camp picks, but wouldn't put money on it. I don't think he's ever really been skinny, has he? I don't think that's been the case. Yeah, we have no idea what Kaylee will do. It is interesting. Caserio said some guys have been in their system. So I heard that and I was like, okay, what's the system? Like, are you talking about these New England offensive linemen that you're bringing in? Are you talking about the overall, like the Texans system? I couldn't tell. It was kind of a balance between, it could be talking about the offense or it could just kind of been lost in translation, which we tried to talk about that. OO says, why don't you just wait to see what they are doing in training camp instead of speculation about any players? That sounds like a great YouTube channel. Yeah, we'll be back at training camp. That sounds good. That is a timeout for OO. OO never really makes much sense. That would be a hell of a YouTube channel. Kevin Schuler says it seems the offensive struggles have been equated to bad coaching last year. They are putting a lot of stock in Nick Kaylee fixing this offense. And the question is, are they asking him to do too much? Is Nick Kaylee being asked to do a little bit too much? Is it realistic to expect Nick Kaylee to get the job done and make do with this offensive line? Does he have enough resources, or are we expecting him to be some sort of superhero? I think that's the question. Like, is it, obviously they've got to be better coached. Obviously Cole Popovich and Nick Kaylee are going to be in charge of that, but are we going to have to grade them on a curve? We're going to have to grade them on a curve because maybe they're figuring some stuff out, because it's possible for an offense to have limitations as far as personnel. And you can still kind of tell if they function like a decent offense. Like, it's easy to separate, okay, this guy's just getting his ass kicked and they're trying to do everything they can do with the card they've been dealt. When it becomes a problem is when the offensive linemen just don't look like they know what they're doing. And that could be an individual thing. That could be a Kenyon Green thing. That could be a Shaq Mason thing. That could be a Juice Scruggs thing. That could be a Jared Patterson thing. That could be a Titus Howard thing. Or it could be just the overall lesson that's being taught to them is not translating. It can be a number of things. And that was really what was going on with the offense. Like, I think the best thing that could happen for this offense, like if we're laying out realistic goals, the best thing that can happen is there's at least a clear idea of what the problem is. Because the difference between an offensive coordinator getting a third year to try to make things right with a split body of work where there was one really good year and then there was one really bad year is if you have a clear picture of what the problem is. In other words, the players stink. Okay. The scheme isn't good and the players aren't picking up the scheme. That's where the guy loses his job. And that's what happened to Bobby Slowick, I think. But
Damn it, Bobby.
you got to get some sort of clear picture of what the problem is. And instead of this constant, well, it's the players, well, it's the system, well, the system does this, well, he doesn't adjust this way. That's what the Texans need. The Texans need a clear picture of what's going on. And quite frankly, it can't be Nick Caley at this point. I don't think the fate of D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio rests on it. But if your offense is struggling, if you have a quarterback that's on his second system in 3 years, you've got to at least put him in a better position to where that's not the biggest problem. And there's really no telling, and we don't even know what Nick Caley is going to ask these guys to do. Like I don't think Nick Caley has been shopping at Nordstrom for players. Like if you're talking about getting prime groceries, he's not shopping at the best grocery store. I mean, they're kind of bargain shopping. If you look at these offensive lines, it's a lot of bodies, it's a lot of quantity. Quality, don't know. They're going to have to be coached up. But there's a few guys on the offensive line that maybe could be long-term guys, but outside of that, it just seems like kind of stopgap. And we might be right back in this position next year. It's going to be a lean on the defense. Is what they're going to do. So your guess is as good as mine. I hope Joe Mixon can hold up, but man, that is a hell of a lot of ask for Joe Mixon. And what was the quote again? Let me make sure I got this right. Let me see. So the Joe Mixon quote: he's in a walking boot for protective reasons. It's something, but it's not anything real big. That's on A-Dub's channel. So do with that what you wish. That seems not awesome. They're voting on rule changes pretty soon. I want to look at this because D'Amico came out, kind of supported the tush push, but they've changed the wording. And I think this is like interesting wording because now they're basically changing the wording to where it's not necessarily attacking the Eagles. So maybe there's like a better chance of this passing. But basically they're saying push or pull a runner in any direction or any time to lift him to his feet. They're saying the penalty should be 10 yards, loss of 10 yards. And it says prohibits an offensive player from pushing, pulling, lifting, or assisting the runner except by individually blocking opponents for him. So when you see offensive linemen pushing players into the end zone, that's now what they're thinking about eliminating. I think this is just a really slippery slope that's being discussed because I think the fact that Jalen Hurts squats 700 pounds has as much to do with the effectiveness of the tush push as some sort of unfair advantage. And if I hadn't seen every team damn near in the entire NFL try to execute this and look like absolute idiots, look like monkeys trying to fuck a football whenever they try to do it, then I wouldn't have anything to base it on. But some of these teams that are voting against it, Green Bay is the one that proposed this. Green Bay, Philadelphia is in their role in their way of a Super Bowl. Buffalo brought it up. Buffalo did it the second most, and they failed to execute it, quite frankly. If they would have executed it better, they probably would have beat the Chiefs, and they perhaps would have won the Super Bowl. Or they would have lost to Philadelphia, and they'd be whining even more about it. I think D'Amico Ryans is right. I mean, there's probably some things and there's some rules where it's just like, okay, they need to figure this out. But in this instance, Jalen Hurts is a freak of nature. We've seen the viral video of Jalen Hurts doing the squat at Oklahoma. What was it, 650, 700, something like that? Something godly for a quarterback, damn near 3 times the average. This is a weird thing to think about. The other thing that they're voting on, and this kind of would have impacted the Texans over the course of history, and would have impacted them last year is the reseeding in the playoffs, which there's talk that it might not pass. Jeremy Fowler did a Jeremy Fowler report, but he said he doesn't think it's going to pass. And it's really all the stuff that was being said in this chat where, you want to value divisions and you don't want to reseed. But I do think reseeding after round one works. I do think that's fair. And I don't know if they're going to separate these or not. And they're talking like once there's an 18-game season, then maybe it changes a little bit. But if you want to value the divisions, that's fine. I understand both sides of this argument with, a 9-win division champ hosting a game against a 12-win team that didn't win their division. It doesn't seem ideal, although they do want to value the divisions. So there's both sides to that. But in the second round reseeding, I kind of feel like a lot of times the higher seed gets punished. So you're kind of like if a team upsets Buffalo and let's say they're rolling on fumes afterwards, like let's say Buffalo's the 2 seed and that doesn't get reseed. I think Kansas City, like say they're the 1 seed, or Baltimore, I think they should do the reseeding there. I actually support that. And NFL has the logistics to be able to do such a thing. I mean, it's not like they're going to have to figure too much out. They can figure it out and they can do it relatively quickly. So I would not be opposed to that. There's talk that it may or may not pass, but I would say the tush push is kind of getting a little bit of momentum, and that's a hell of a precedent to set. Something that D'Amico Ryan said that he's not in favor of, quite frankly, for pretty much the same reasons that we just mentioned there. It's something to keep an eye on, and that should become we should get clarity on that by the end of the week. So we'll figure that out and see where that goes. Does the division winner still get home field? No, does not. In this instance, and we'll see. It might not get voted on, but I get the argument on both sides. When it comes to it, Julie Batista put out a Judy Batista. I said Julie. Judy Batista put out a list of teams, and this is 1 to 5. This is all the way down, and she's talking about teams that are the safest or in the most trouble when it comes to not winning the division. So division winners that are in the most trouble of not repeating as division champs next season. And you might be pleasantly surprised what she says. I've kind of said that the AFC South is going to be better. I think it will. It can't be much worse. You had 2 teams drafting in the top 4 of the draft, top 5 of the draft. And then you had another one in the top, what was it, 15, 13, whatever Indy was. So it can't be much worse. But she has the Lions number 1 as being the most threatened. Obviously, Minnesota had a good year last year. Green Bay is good. Chicago, they're trying to be good, and they're actively trying to do so. Baltimore, we always know that the AFC North, pretty tough. Philadelphia, you had Washington last year. You had Dallas. They're going to get Dak Prescott back. You feel there. Los Angeles, I mean, San Francisco, every other year they either miss the playoffs or they go to the NFC Championship. And then she has the Texans. And this is her description. She says, the Texans had a hideous offensive line and brutal string of wide receiver injuries leading to C.J. Stroud's sophomore slump. Yet Houston still won the AFC title by multiple games. On paper, the competition has improved, but that's on paper. She makes that very clear. The Jags drafted the single most exciting player in the game and 2-way star Travis Hunter. But Liam Cohen is a rookie head coach, fact. So we know nothing of his game management, true. The Colts brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson, and the hope is that it brings out the best in both quarterbacks. Good luck with that. And lastly, the Titans have the top overall pick in Cam Ward. The Texans changed their offensive line. If it gels, continuity is likely to be the team's friend in the division. So she doesn't feel like there's too much of a threat for the Texans when it comes to the to the division. And I will say, when you look at it that way, and you look at what all these other division champs are going up against compared to what the Texans are going up against, my God, thank God the South. Goodness gracious. Even if it is better, my God, you imagine winning the division and then you got to go against the Vikings, the Packers, and the Bears. That sucks. All those others are there. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Mike says I'm on that white girl. I don't know what that means because I sniffed a little bit. Is that like a Coke? You think I'm on Coke? It would be a long night if that were the case. No, I just sniff, little allergies. Maybe on some of that
high-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
But no, I'm not blowing lines at the crib or anything like that. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to ride along. Joe Mixon, something, but not something big. Nick Caserio failing to make moves. And thank God for the AFC South. We're getting closer to training camp. We're less than 100 days away from the season. What a time to be alive. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Reminder, like the damn video. Listen and watch SNL Monday through Friday, 4 o'clock. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize. Every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days. Opinions to give. We got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number 1. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too.